Before we get into today's video, I do want to let you guys know that this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please remember to be kind to everybody everywhere in your everyday life, in your home, in the grocery store, and especially in the comment section down below. Please do not show hate to anybody, anywhere. Good morning, my lovelies, my beauties, my friends. My name is Christina and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for clicking on this video. I really hope that you will subscribe, stick around, take a chance in hearing some things that I have to say. And if you are a returning subscriber, y'all already know, y'all are my babies. So good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody doing today? I hope you all are having an amazing day. I hope you all have had a wonderful week. I hope everybody is starting out their 2022 with a beautiful bang. Not just a bang, because if we say bang, it could mean a bunch of different things, but a beautiful bang. I really hope that everybody is drinking their water. Yeah, not just me, right? Everybody's going to drink their water this year, right? More water, more agua, more H2O. We're going to treat our bodies nice in 2022. Yes, we are. And I hope everybody is getting outside and walking and just being kind to themselves. I really hope that 2022 will be the year that we are kinder to ourselves and others. So in today's video, we are going to be talking about David Parker Ray. Have y'all heard about this? David Parker Ray and his daughter, Jessie, so to say. Now, Jessie is a grown behind woman at this point. She's probably watching this video right now. Who knows? But yeah, this is a very interesting duo, if I must say. Before we go any further, I did want to stop and thank today's sponsor, Babbel. Babbel, thank you so much for sponsoring today's video.
Feliz Año Nuevo, amigos. Estoy aprendiendo español.
Babbel is a language learning app where you can learn a new language in just 3 weeks. The lessons are so super duper easy and they teach you like real life conversations, things that you would actually use. Jaden, what language are you learning right now?
Aprendiendo español.
Spanish. Babbel's lessons are so easy. You can do them in just a short 10 minutes. You can do them while riding the bus, while you're standing in line to check out at the grocery store. And Babbel also will teach you in multiple different ways. You can either learn by using their lessons, you can listen to the podcast, you can watch videos, or my personal favorite, which is the games. Jaden, what is your personal favorite?
That's a tough one. I do really like the games, but the lessons are so fun. They basically are the games.
Babbel offers a 20-day money-back guarantee, and all you've got to do to start learning a new language is click the link down in the description box, and you'll also get 65% off of your subscription today.
Did you just say 65% off?
Yes, all you got to do is click the link down in the description box, and you can start learning a new language with Babbel and get 65% off today. Thanks again, Babbel. This is going to be a story time for the books. So David Parker Ray, aka the owner, the creator, the builder of the ToyBox, the adult ToyBox. Now, this ToyBox was in his backyard of where he lived in Elephant Butte, New Mexico, and it was like a trailer that he redesigned all on the inside, and it is said that he spent over $100,000 creating this adult ToyBox. You get where we're going here, right? Okay, so over $100,000 into this ToyBox. Now, he lived in Elephant Butte when everything went down that we're going to talk about here today. And Elephant Butte in New Mexico is a very, very, very small town. In 2019, it had less than 1,400 people in the whole entire town. It's a retirement community, I think less than 700 houses. Big, big, big lakes there with huge catfish. Now, these catfish were like 120 something pounds catfish. Big, ugly, bottom feeding catfish, big slimy fish with the long things that will eat literally anything. And when I say anything, they will eat anything. So let's just start at the beginning. David Parker Ray was born on November 6th of 1939 in Belen, New Mexico. He grew up very, very poor, and his mother and him lived with his mother's parents on a small ranch. And it was just him, his sister, his mother, and his grandparents. He was raised mostly by his grandfather, which was his mother's father, and it is said that his grandfather really liked to push him around. Now, his father would periodically come into his life and put hands on his mother right in front of him. And when his father would show up at the ranch, he would always bring his young son certain magazines, okay? Now, y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all know what kind of magazines we're talking about, right? But these magazines wasn't just those types of magazines, back in the 60s and 70s when you used to have to dig under your uncle's bed and pull out that chest and crack it open to take a peek into this magazine you weren't supposed to be looking at real quick and put it back underneath. He would bring him, his bio dad would bring him these magazines while he pushed his mama around right in front of him. But in these magazines, a lot of them had a tying up, the gagging, all of that type of stuff, and was putting these images in this little boy, David's mind from a young age. Now, he became obsessed with things of this nature starting very, very young. He said he could remember as young as 9 years old, he became obsessed with seeing these images, looking for these images, hoping to play out these images and stuff of that nature. But also while he was going through this, it is said that David was very, very, very shy. He used to get pushed around in school. He'd get beat up, shoved in a locker. Anytime he spoke to a girl or a girl spoke to him, he would completely lock up. And then the kids would pick on him about that too and bully him for that reason. Then he would come home from school and his grandpa would push him around. And then when his dad would come over, his dad would push his mom around and then push him around. And so the start of his life was just really rough, but also bizarre at the same time too, because it had that other magazine element. Now, when David Parker Ray was around 13 years old, this is when he said he started to use substances when he could, and drinking and smoking cigarettes on the side. And then he got older, he went to high school, and he really started to get into it more. Now, he did finish high school, but not before David Parker Ray would say that at 14 years old was when he decided he was going to act out his fantasy. He said that he went at 14 years old, found a woman that was out and about by herself. He said that he took a knife and held it to her throat, tied her to a tree, completely had his way with her in that way, but also beat her and tortured her as well too, and then took her life and left her tied to the tree. Now, this is at 14 years old, you guys. He goes back to the ranch, finishes high school. As he is finishing high school, though, his fantasies are becoming more and more obsessive in his own mind. He goes from high school and becomes a mechanic. And then after he's a mechanic for a little bit, he goes into the army for a while. Now, while he's in the army, there's not a whole lot known other than the fact that his fantasies were still very much strong. He would later allegedly confess to a girlfriend that he took a woman's life once a year, every year for 40 years. Okay, now, according to him, at least 40 women that he kidnapped, tortured, had his complete way with them, and then killed them and then left them. But nevertheless, just to keep the story going here, he went into the military. He ended up being honorably discharged from the army, and then he got out and decided to become a mechanic as well. Now, during this time, he got married, divorced, and by the time he was 27 years old, he met a young 18-year-old young lady, young, beautiful blonde who was hitchhiking, and he got her pregnant. Now, he got her pregnant with a little girl whom he would later name Jessie. Now, while Jessie was about 3 years old and he was with this beautiful young woman that he had swept off of her feet at 18 years old while he was 27 years old. But when Jessie was about 3 years old, this is when David decided that he was completely bored. He needed more excitement in his life, and he was going to join like the hippie revolution and leave his young daughter and his mother of his child at home. This is when he started traveling, hitchhiking, being with other women, and he met a young woman named Sally, another young, beautiful blonde, and he allegedly got Sally pregnant. While he was doing this hitchhiking, he stopped at a truck stop with this young Sally, and he met this trucker and this trucker's wife, and they were on the road. Well, they all four got together. They were riding from different places. They would stop, sleep, and eat. And Sally told this trucker and his wife that she was pregnant with David's baby, and she was so excited. The next morning, when they woke up, Sally, poof, was gone, completely disappeared. When the trucker asked David where Sally was, he said, guess she ran off somewhere, and completely shrugged it off. The trucker at the time felt like he didn't have any reason to not believe David, but it was super strange because that didn't seem to be this Sally's personality. I mean, she was very vibrant and happy and just didn't seem like she would just disappear pregnant in the middle of the night. However, that's exactly what she did. Not long after this, David decides he's going to go back home to his third wife, who has his daughter, and be a family with them. Well, he was not with her too long before he divorced her and decided to move to Elephant Butte, New Mexico. When he moved to Elephant Butte, New Mexico at this time, this is where he would stay until the end of his life. So he moves here in this small town I was telling you guys about in the very beginning, less than 1,400 people, big retirement community, and decides he's going to be a mechanic. Now, David was very well liked in his community. Like, we have heard this story before, right? The guy that everybody likes, the guy that everybody thinks is so helpful, has a secret double life. David was well known in his community for finding dogs that had been injured and then bringing them back to his house and doctoring them up, healing them, and then, giving them to different people or homes. He was also known for being very helpful and very kind and a great mechanic. And then he was also known for being a very good father to his daughter, Jessie. Now, it is said he has 2 children. I couldn't find much about the second child, but Jessie is going to be very important in this video. Jessie looked up to her father so much. She loved her father, David. The sun rose and set in his rump, as us country folks would say. But David had his eyes on other things. He liked to play good dad for the public, but really he had this completely separate life. While David was living in Elephant Butte, this very small town retirement community, his thirst for the sadistic things that he thought about 24/7 continued to grow. See, it is said that David actually got into Satan worshiping, and there's actually a lot of proof that shows that's exactly what he did. Later on, he would get into witchcraft and doing sacrifices to the devil and all of that. But at this time, he really began to obsess over things of hurting people. He got off on seeing a woman in real pain. So at this time, what David was doing was at nighttime, he would go and find prostitutes that were walking the streets. He would bring them back to his place where he was going to sleep with them, but then he would spike them with a drink, or he would choke them out, and he would drug them, and then he would torture them for 3 days, and they would be so out of it, he would film it, he would obsess and watch these videos, and then he would take them and drop them off somewhere. It was also reported that when he would pick up some of these women and take them back and torture them for 3 days and sleep with them, that he would take some of them and drive them over the Mexico border. And some parts of Mexico from Elephant Butte is only just a few hours drive. And he would drive them over the Mexico border and sell them into slavery. So he had this whole double life going on while the community thought he was just this nice, animal-loving, good father of an old man. Around this time, as David's sadistic nature continued to grow, he had a boat. And remember that lake I was telling y'all about with these big, giant, 100-pound plus slimy catfish? David would take his boat out with young friends, and he was drinking and he would do partying and stuff like that. And one night while he was out on the boat entertaining all of his friends, they got into the discussion of if you killed somebody, how would you get rid of the body? Now, friends would later say that they specifically remember a conversation that they had with David on the boat and how he described in detail on all you have to do is bring the body out there onto the lake, cut the body open, that way the fish can smell the parts of the blood and stuff like that, and throw the body over into the lake, and the catfish will eat them. Well, see, these lakes are very heavy with algae, so it's that dark green, mucky, muddy, and remember how I told y'all catfish will eat anything? They will eat anything. During the 1990s, this is when people in Elephant Butte started noticing that David's daughter, Jessie, was really close to her father. Like, she almost never had a boyfriend. She was always looking at her father with these stars in her eyes, and it seemed a bit uncomfortable. So naturally, when Jessie turned up pregnant in the 1990s, the whole entire town believed for sure that she was pregnant by her own father. Now, they would deny these rumors, but the father of her baby never came forward and she never released a name. And people still to this day believe that she was pregnant by her own father. Like, that's how close they were. Now, during this time of the 1990s is when David realized that taking these women and bringing them back to his house could not keep happening like this. He needed something better. Also during this time, the videos that he was taking of the other women that he was, selling across the Mexican border started to sell. Like, he would actually take these videotapes of these women that he and all of that, sometimes, and he would sell these snuff films and people would buy them for big bucks. So he went and bought a white trailer to put in his backyard. And this is what would now infamously be named the ToyBox. And this is how David got his name of the ToyBox Killer. Now, in this box or this trailer that he completely redid is nothing short of a nightmare. Like, I really feel like calling this a nightmare is an understatement. Us women, okay, just women, all right, I'm talking to y'all. He had a gynecologist chair in there, which just being in that position anyways, you know what I mean? Gynecologist chair, and he built all of these different toys. Like, he would take shapes, toys that were shaped, and you know what I mean, and put nails on them. So when he used them, it would tear you up from the inside out. He completely redesigned this as a torture chamber, and he even had a sign inside of it naming it Satan's Den. He had cameras all in this box, and it locked from the outside. Littering the floor were whips, chains, pulleys, straps, clamps, leg spreader bars, surgical blades, and saws, and numerous of toys. There was a wooden contraption used to bend over and immobilize Ray's victims. On the walls were detailed diagrams showing different methods and techniques for inflicting pain. Investigators also discovered in the trailer of the ToyBox Killer a videotape from 1996 showing a terrified woman being tortured and taken advantage of by Ray and his girlfriend at the time. The woman on the videotape would later be identified by her ex-mother-in-law as Kelly Garrett, a former friend of David Ray's daughter. Now get this. In July of 1996, this young woman, Kelly, who was a newlywed at this time, gets into a fight with her new husband. Okay, they get into an argument. She decides she's going to go blow off some steam. She's going to go to a pool hall, shoot some pool with her friends. Okay, she goes to the pool hall and she runs into her friend, Jessie. Hey girl, hugs her. How are you doing? Jessie says, oh, don't worry about your husband, girl. We're going to have fun tonight. Let me buy you a drink. She buys her a drink, and Jessie decides she's going to take Kelly to a bar in a town not too far away. When they get there, this is when Kelly starts to feel very woozy and out of it, and it is because her good friend Jessie put something in her drink. At this point, Jessie was working with and for her father. Later, Kelly would say she remembered trying to walk out to the parking lot because Jessie was going to give her a ride home, and then she was hit from behind, and she didn't remember much after that. When David Ray got Kelly into the toy box, he immediately put a dog collar around her and gave her more substances to keep her out of it for a few days. He strapped her up into the chair. He did all of the disgusting things that he did to women while videotaping them. And then he would also play this extremely disturbing and creepy message. I will leave the link of it down in the description box. Please, trigger warning, listen with your... Only if you're like an adult, over 25, I would say, and... It's a huge trigger, okay, because he talks very disturbingly. The way that the recording pretty much starts out is he's like, hey, B. He was like, you're going to be tortured, and I'm going to love it. And if you scream, it's going to be worse. And it goes on and on and on about his detailed plan. And he would play these long recordings of himself talking, and he just sounds like he smokes cigarettes all day long in a dark room, like... And he would play these recordings while the women were in these chairs, strapped with their legs up, tied down with leg spreaders in between their knees, forcing their knees open. And it was just undescribable. After 2 days of David Ray drugging her and abusing her in every way and videotaping her, he released her from all of the chains. He her throat, and he went and dumped her in an alley somewhere. What he didn't realize is that although she had been through all of that and her throat had been slit, she didn't die. Someone ended up finding her and taking her to the hospital, and as she recovered, she told the story of like what she could remember, and she didn't really know what happened, and she was hurt and she was bleeding in places she should not be bleeding in, and her throat had been slit. Later, was said that Kelly felt like the cops did not believe her, and her husband definitely didn't believe her. As a matter of fact, her husband and her mother-in-law, they were infuriated. He immediately went and had the wedding annulled, so they were no longer married, and he left her. Like, you guys, can you imagine how hard that is? Can you imagine, like... You're in love. You're going to spend the rest of your life with somebody. And then you go out to play pool to blow off steam because y'all have done got into a fight. Okay, you're going to play pool. You have one beer with your girlfriend. And then you end up gone for however many days. In this situation, tortured, beaten, videotaped, drugged, all of that, throat slit. And then your husband leaves you and everything because they think you're out cheating on them like... Now, during this time, as David was still, kidnapping women and torturing them like on a weekly basis, I mean, this was constant that this was happening, and nobody in his community suspected him at all. Sometimes he would drive to other nearby towns and take women. He ended up having multiple different girlfriends, and he would bring his girlfriends into this. I literally have no idea. You guys, like, this man looks so disgusting to me. So sorry. So sorry. And maybe it's probably because I know what kind of person he is, but like, how did he continue to get girlfriends? Like, and his daughter, like, what kind of, it's got to be the devil worship or something. Like, Nevertheless, he ended up getting with this young woman named Cynthia Hindy, who was actually a beautiful young blonde. He met her at her work, and she would later go on to say, because she was married at the time, somehow, some way, David Ray ends up getting to a conversation with Cindy at her work about their desires and their fantasies. And Cindy tells Ray that her husband ain't into all that. And he basically says, well, come on over to the house, baby. Let me tie you up, whip you. And what did he say to her? Whatever he said to her, she came over and they got into a intimate relationship together. And before you know it, she was doing substances with him, done left her husband, and was David's full-time chick at the time. Now, simultaneously, while this is going on, Jessie, his daughter, who also was doing all of these disgusting things with her father, gets a boyfriend, this guy named Roy. Now, Roy had just gotten out of prison. He was a Satan worshiper as well. Like, he had all kinds of stuff in the house that he was living at. It was even said that he had killed people before, and he just got full-blown into what David had going on with the ToyBox. So you've got all four of them now, just kidnapping women, torture, all of this, all together. Now, how did this all end? Because it went on for many, many, many years, and it is believed that David Ray kidnapped, tortured, and over 60 women. Okay, that's just what they can gather. Could be more. His girlfriend at the time, Cindy, decided she was going to go out of town. She had something she had to go out of town for. And Cindy would later say that David's old crusty behind was boo-hooing to her and saying that he didn't want to be alone and that he couldn't be alone and he needed some company. So Cindy suggested, well, we'll go get you a girl that you can keep, and play with and have your way with while I'm gone. They thought, well, that's just a great idea. In March of 1999, a young 22-year-old woman named Cynthia was street walking in a parking lot. Okay, she was looking to make some money. David and his girlfriend, Cindy, at the time, went up and found the nearest pimp. And they was like, listen, we need a girl. You got one? And he was like, yeah, I got one over there. He was like, my budget's about $30. Okay, he's like, all right, that one right there is perfect. Cynthia, and lured her back to the car. Now, when they got her to the car, this is when they put handcuffs on her, and David pretended like he was an undercover police officer and that he was arresting her and taking her in. Now, she tried to run and get away from him, but she was no match for him and his girlfriend, Cindy, and they took her away in the car as if they were going to arrest her. They immediately took the young Cynthia back to the ToyBox trailer, which was soundproof, by the way. I forgot to tell you guys that. He completely soundproofed this thing. You could not hear a peep from the outside of what was going on the inside. He strapped her to the gynecologist chair and began to have his way with her. The two of them used whips and medical instruments. They even used electric shock and very, very painful instruments to torture her. But before the torture, David would, as usual, play this cassette tape with a recording detailing exactly what she was going to be forced to endure. David explained on the cassette tape that she was to refer to him as only master and the woman with him as mistress and never speak unless spoken to first. Cynthia would later say in interviews that the way he talked, I didn't feel like this was his first time. It was like he knew what he was doing. He told me I was never going to see my family again, and he told me he would kill me like the others. On the third day, while David was at work, Cindy accidentally left the keys to Cynthia's restraints on the table where she was chained while she left the room. And I know it's kind of confusing. You've got Cynthia and Cindy here. Now, Cindy, again, is David's girlfriend. She's the one that's in on all this. She's helping. She's nasty as he is, in my opinion, okay? And then you've got Cynthia, the young 22-year-old woman that was street walking that's been kidnapped. Okay, so she is handcuffed at this time. They've actually got her inside the house at this point. So when she left the room and she got the keys, she ended up trying to free one of her hands. Right around this time, Cindy comes back into the room, sees that she's got her hands freed, and takes a lamp and busts it over Cynthia's head. They began to tussle and fight, and some way, somehow, Cynthia was able to get an ice pick, and she stabbed Cindy in the head. As Cindy was laying on the floor in complete agony and pain, as somebody would with an ice pick through your skull, this is when Cynthia was able to free herself as much as she could her hands, and she ran out. She ran out. She started running down the road. She was crying. She was bleeding. She had chains on her, and she was butt naked. She found the closest mobile home that she could find and she started banging on the door. When she banged on the door, the owner opened the door and let her in and locked the door behind. And this is when the owner of this mobile home called 911. They called the police and they were like, hey, there's a woman here. She's been chained. She's crying, like she's bleeding. She's obviously been hurt. She's naked. And that is when the cops came. When the cops came and took Cynthia down to have her examined, to be treated for everything that she had been through, Cynthia could not tell them where she was at or really who she was with. I mean, they came and took her in the night that she could describe what they looked like, but she had no idea where she was at. She had been blindfolded, all of this. Well, the part that I forgot to tell you guys was when she got a hand freed, she actually was able to get the phone. They had like house phones back then and called 911, but Cindy came in and hung the phone up. Because of that, it being such a small town, it was not typical for the police department to get a 911 call and hang up. So they were able to trace it back to that house. And when the cops came there and busted in David's house and into his ToyBox torture chamber, they were not ready for what they saw. I mean, they still, the FBI and stuff, they still have this ToyBox trailer the exact way that it was found back in 1999. I mean, they were beyond shocked at what they found. As news reporting started going out, the cops were begging people to come forward. Like, because they couldn't really, all they could pin on him at this point was kidnapping. When they went in and they searched his house, they found hundreds of videotapes, okay? Hundreds of videotapes of him torturing women, the women completely bound in this gynecologist chair. But since they couldn't identify any of these women, and because of the fact that he drugged them to the point that they could not remember what happened to them, nobody could really testify against him at this point. And when they interviewed him, he just said, listen, I'm into this type of thing. I'm into it. These women loved it. They all loved it. They begged and they wanted more. And they really couldn't stick him with much other than the kidnapping. However, with the publicity of this and it being in such a small town, there was another young woman that saw everything that was going on and came forward. Now, I don't know. It's so hard to think, like, even if you remembered this, I mean, would you come forward? I mean, the things that he was doing to these women, some of it was bestiality too. I mean, he was videotaping animals, like, oh my gosh, you guys, it's like that type of thing, like, oh, you never, ever want to remember it. Like oh my gosh. Traumatizing is not even, it's not an adequate enough word. Nevertheless, another woman did come forward. Angelica Montano. She was an acquaintance of David's who, after visiting his house to borrow cake mix, had been drugged, taken advantage of, and tortured by David before being left by a highway out in the desert where she was found by the police, but there had never been any follow-up on her case. David would use these substances on these women to make them forget. But now with two women able to come forward, the DA felt like they had a case against David, his daughter, and she's free right now too, and his girlfriend, Cindy, and this other guy now, Roy, that had jumped in on it. And again, like I was saying earlier, not to drag this video out for a whole hour, because I think you guys get the point of how terrible this was. Like this, around this time too, is when they were doing actual like seances and sacrifices to the devil. Long story short, in the end, basically David's daughter and her boyfriend and his girlfriend all basically rolled on him. They testified against him, and although they were never able to get him for actual murder, they were able to sentence him to 224 years. But get this. He got sentenced to 224 years. He was in there for 1 day, and he had a heart attack and died. Yeah. He literally served no time, basically. And he never seemed like it bothered him. He didn't care. He loved everything that he did. And his ex-girlfriend, Cindy, who is now out. All three of the other ones are out now. I mean, his daughter only served 2.5 years. She had a 5-year sentence, served 2.5 years. She was out. Crazy. You got people that sell marijuana, you know what I mean, that get way more time than that. Do not get me started. Nevertheless, they all say that he killed people and he took their bodies and put it in that lake, and the catfish ate the bodies of 30, 40 women that he actually killed. And something that one of his victims would later say, that there are more people out there than David like this, or the ToyBox killer. Like there are, I mean, if you look at my channel and my playlist, there are many, and these are just people that made it high profile that we hear about their cases. You think about how many situations happen, or how many cases happen, or how many people that are caught that never make mainstream media. Like, people are sick. The only tiny okay thing about, and nothing is about this case is okay, is that to me, he looks creepy. Like, he looks like you do not want to go to his house and borrow cake mix. Okay. Like, no offense or anything, but you know, a lot of the times we do these stories and you have like these serial killers and stuff that are very charming, very charismatic, very like, women really feel like they're good looking. You got like Chris Watts, or even, you know, Ted Bundy. I mean, the women were crazy about Ted Bundy. And you think like they don't look like that type of person, but this guy, he looks like it. But he had these young girlfriends, and disgusting. Disgusting, disgusting. We got to get higher standards, ladies. So that's it. That is the story of the ToyBox killer. What do you think? Have y'all heard about this? Do you think it's crazy? Like the catfish? Oh my gosh, he was a mastermind, and he got away with it for so long. There's victims that talked about how they didn't understand why they were having like these nightmares of being tortured, or why they woke up bleeding. Like, they didn't remember it, but they kept having, they had PTSD. So even though they didn't remember it, they would have these nightmares of it happening over and over again, but yet they didn't understand why they were having these nightmares. And then to come to find out later on, the reason why they were having these nightmares and this trauma response was because it actually happened to them. I mean, so like the one woman, Cynthia, she had a problem even being married, like even allowing her husband to touch her in any way after that. Like, traumatizing. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, my loves, thank you so much for watching this video. Please do not forget to like it. It's a free way that you can help your girl out. And until next time, I love you guys so very much. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye. Love you guys. Bye.
We are dreaming in the dark. We are nothing more than dust.